Hello, I'm Norman Lamb and I'm the Lib Dem MP for North Norfolk, and I was also a health minister from 2012 to 2015. And I've spent a lot of time over the last few years thinking about drug policy, reading about the approach taken in different countries, and the conclusion that I've reached is that the war on drugs internationally has been an unmitigated and catastrophic disaster. Above all else, I think we hopelessly fail to protect children and young people from the dangers of drugs. And that's, in a sense, the charge that I put to this government, that you are recklessly putting teenagers and young people at risk by failing to take drugs out of the hands of organised crime. Because the way in which it works at the moment is that anybody in any community, anywhere around the country, can get access to drugs, particularly obviously cannabis, but they can only do it by way of buying from a criminal, usually on the street. And of course, you have no idea what you're buying. And so routinely, day by day, very many young people across our country are put at risk. I think that is intolerable, and I think it makes the case very strongly for a different approach. But as well as putting children, teenagers, young people at risk, also leaving the drugs market in the hands of criminals results in the use of extreme violence in many communities, particularly the most disadvantaged communities. The only way in which to make sure that you protect your market if you are selling to a particular community is to use extreme violence to keep other sellers away from your market. And that's what routinely happens across our country, particularly in inner cities. And it's what in part is behind the awful violence, the knife and gun crime we see, particularly in London at present. The association between that and the illegal drugs trade is very close. And so if you take a different approach, legalising and regulating cannabis for sale, then you would start to take criminals out of the market. You would stop also the ludicrous criminalisation of so many young people. We still see vast numbers of people across our country given criminal records for either the recreational use of cannabis or indeed for using cannabis for medicinal purposes. And the idea that someone who perhaps is using cannabis for pain relief or because they have epilepsy or for multiple sclerosis, and that we end up then criminalising them is really beyond the pale, and I think we should expect more from a civilised society. And so my view is that to end this ludicrous approach, which puts young people at risk, which hands billions of pounds every year to organised crime, and which criminalises so many young people, particularly when you think that there will be many people in this government who will have used drugs at some time in their past. They appear to be willing to see fellow citizens criminalised with their careers blighted for doing something that they themselves have done. There is real hypocrisy there. So my call is for a radical rethink of this. I would start by legalising cannabis for medicinal purposes, but I would go further than that. I would legalise cannabis for recreational use as well. I would regulate the market so that you can control potency, so that you can protect particularly young people from the risks of the most potent strains. And above all else, you can control who sells the drug as well through a regulated approach. I would decriminalise the purchase of all drugs so that we again avoid people ending up with a criminal record for purchasing drugs. And I would then conduct a thorough review about the best long-term approach to the purchase of other drugs beyond cannabis. But we have seen across the world, and the most recent example being Canada, where they have introduced a legalized, regulated market. It comes into play very soon. We have seen a much more rational approach, and it's one that we should follow in this country. Thanks very much.